Thank you for the welcome. Kia ora koutou katoa. It's really, really great to be with you all here today. From memory, when I left 13 years ago, the state of the product profession definitely wasn't able to fill this room. So it's really, really exciting to see how much our industry has grown. So after spending 13 years in the Valley building the various products that's been mentioned, my wife and I recently moved back with our young family, pictured here. This is actually the last photo that we took before we flew back out. And what I found coming back here, especially in the tech and startup sector, feels like almost a different country in a really great way. 13 years ago, tech startups in New Zealand really felt a bit of a dirt track. You kind of have to make your own way through. I remember working at TradeMe, and after I finished up there, I looked around and I kind of felt like that was it. Xero, I think, was a $50 million market cap company where they had to go public to raise venture funding because that was the reality back then. And so today, it really feels like more of a paved road. It's not quite a highway yet, but it's definitely a big upgrade. And in fact, the New Zealand tech sector contributes over $24 billion to the GDP and employs 120,000 people, which is really amazing. And we rank among the best globally for human capital and education. So from my perspective, I feel like the talent is here and the creativity is here. But, there is a but, productivity, which is what we turn that talent into, is still 30 to 40% below our high-performing OECD peers. I'm sure this is not a surprise. We talk about productivity a lot in New Zealand. So my provocation today is that we don't have a talent problem in New Zealand. We have an ownership problem. Not enough people treating outcomes as their responsibility. And I think most critically and relevant to us today is that product sits at the intersection of strategy, execution, and really taking and understanding customer truth to build the right things. And that gives product a special power and responsibility to lead the cultural change that's needed for us to move more to an ownership mentality. And so I really believe, and I've seen this happen over and over again, that when product leads with ownership, everyone else tends to follow. And that's really what I mean by the founder's mindset for product leaders. So let's unpack a little bit on what that mindset shift might mean that we need from what we have to where we want to be. So I haven't been back in New Zealand for too long, so about 5.5 months. So excuse me if there's some naivety in my observations. But so far, my observations in talking to folks and working with folks here is that many product folks in New Zealand came from the background of managing corporate IT programs and IT transformation programs. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It actually built really strong delivery discipline. But as many of you all know, the primary goal of those programs generally was to not F it up. It's generally to manage risk, right? Not exactly value creation and growth. That's not going to go well around the boardroom on IT transformation projects. So project management is all about, did we deliver to scope and budget? But product leadership is all about, did we change the outcome? And as a result of that, there's a lot of kind of downstream to this. For example, what methodology you use, that's just scaffolding. It's not culture, nor outcome. I don't think my entire 13 years in Silicon Valley, I've ever heard the word agile once. People just ask, did it work? What's the outcome? Do we drive up customer adoption? Do we make more money? There's been numerous studies that shows that teams who link product work to P&L grow significantly faster. And some of the studies show that they grow up to 35 to 50% faster. And so that's the gap that we have to close. And it's by replacing delivery thinking with more ownership thinking. And so that's all great if you all agree that that's important, but what does ownership actually mean? So I thought a little bit about this, because in a way, it's kind of reflecting almost a fish thinking about the water around it. So I have to really think about, oh, what does this actually mean in terms of how I've operated or I've seen the companies around me operate for the past few decades. And I think at a nutshell, ownership really just means doing whatever it takes for the outcome to manifest. But the key point there is that you are not a messenger or a coordinator. You are the vessel for the outcome to happen. And I think it has two different pieces. The first piece is maximum ambition. You want to define outcomes that's bold enough to really matter for your team, matter for your company, or even bigger. And the second piece is relentless execution, which is to learn and iterate until the outcomes happen. Ambition sets a ceiling, execution raises the floor. We used to say at Facebook that we used to have performance standards when you have, if you did really well, you have exceeds expectations, and we always say that this quarter's exceed expectation is next quarter's meets expectation. And together they form this loop that really compounds results. So let's just spend a little bit more time to talk about what each half of this loop actually means. So, ambition. Maximum ambition is extreme clarity and high standards. So that means raising the bar continuously, making progress visible, and making those standards really, really explicit. And one way to do this that I like to do with teams back in the Valley, but also as I've been working with companies here, it's increasingly something that I'm doing with companies and teams here, is to use what's called 50-50 goals. That you set a target that teams has a real shot at achieving, but it's not a guarantee. If every team hits every goal every time, clearly the goals were too small. If nobody hits them, then, well, yeah, it's not a real goal, obviously. So 50% hit rate over a quarter is generally a pretty good bar for ambition and reality. When we actually do assess teams based on this with several initiatives and companies that I used to work in the Valley. We do look at teams that have hit 80, 90, 100% of their goals. And that's a serious question around you probably need to really change your goals this quarter because clearly they have been set too low. And the second piece is, I think we all know that your environment sets your standards. We are often told that the people around us shape who we become. Well, that is 100% true, if not more true, for your team and the company that you work at. You really want to reward your best people with scope and trust. You want to move fast on replacing those who are not meeting the bar. You want to hire slow. You want to fire fast. You're being kind when you help someone to find a seat where they can be a superstar that just doesn't happen to be at your company. And that's actually the respectful thing to do for their human creative genius, and also fair to the other high performers at your company. But the caveat I want to add is that that you do not and should not be a jerk while doing all this, because it's really not about you. It's really you and the company are just a vessel to manifest something that should really exist in the world. And at the end of the day, winning should come with a presumed baseline of respect and purpose, because ultimately, people only really care about three things at work: that they feel respected, they're doing work that's meaningful, and they're winning. But I think it's often easy when focusing on the respect part to forget that if you don't have a baseline of winning, then the other two pieces kind of feel really hollow. All right, well, the second piece, relentless execution. So having a culture of ambition is great, but clearly it's not sufficient. The second critical piece is being really curious and being really good at getting things done. Shocker, winners are often not the smartest in the room, but they are just really, really good at executing. Facebook Marketplace, Instagram Reels, Stripe apps, I can go on. But all these products didn't start that great. They started pretty shitty, actually. But it was really the relentless execution and feedback iteration loops that eventually built them to be really great businesses. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine, now I'm seeing headlines, that Gen Z are coming to Facebook because of Facebook Marketplace. That was not our original goal, but it's really amazing to see things that you build become bigger than and the team that's behind it. You clearly don't need perfect ideas, but you do need perfect execution with an obsession with a problem and the humility to learn. Fast, high-quality execution gives you really clean signal, and it improves your strategy. Poor execution just creates noise because you don't know what actually caused it to fail. Is it because you had the wrong strategy or you just executed really poorly? And it's just really hard to learn from noise. So here's a few ways that I found to be better execution. Obviously, we talk about being customer obsessed. This is really, really important. I also echo that point. Staying close to your customers and prospects is really important. I remember that when I was heading up product for the last startup I was at, when you look at this is a B2B SaaS company, Common Room, when you add up the number of hours that's spent on both participating in and watching sales calls, I was the number one person on that by the difference of about 3x. And it's really, really important because this is how you learn. And having that rate of learning is going to be really, really important. But also really publish and celebrate learnings and that iteration loop so that progress is really visible to everyone is also really, really important. The second piece about execution is that it's really, really important to stay ruthless about sunk costs. It doesn't matter how much time or money you put into a feature or a product or whatever. What matters is whether customers can get value now, and when facts change, plans change, no one loses face for changing their mind in light of new data. That is, in my mind, what humility actually means. As a side note, I think that I hear the word humble and humility a lot since coming back to New Zealand. And I think that being humble doesn't mean underselling yourself at all. It has zero correlation with how well you talk about yourself. Being humble means being open, really listening, having a growth mindset, and acknowledging the fact that you can learn from anyone. And the last piece is that data and proximity to the customer should always beat seniority. Anyone wins an argument if they bring fresh customer evidence and a measurable result. This is how you create a culture where truth travels quickly to the decision. At both Facebook and Stripe, we would often flag times when too many people, often execs, opined too much without it being rooted in something. And some of the best things happen because the features were already shipped and it was more effort to deprecate them than to just leave it around. That's actually, as a side note, that's actually a story of how Facebook mobile app ads became a thing. And Facebook mobile app ads was the single product that proved that Facebook could make money on mobile. This is when Facebook was $18 a share, when no one thinks that Facebook could make money. Mobile app ads was a single product that first earned $1 billion for Facebook. But that product, every single exec was against it. They thought it was a terrible, horrible idea. The app market was nothing. Why are we doing this? But the only reason why it wasn't killed was because the engineer already shipped it 2 days ago. And it was too much work to like sunset it. They're like, oh, well, let's just see what happens. And there you go. That became Facebook's first billion-dollar ad product. And actually, that engineer that built that later became my engineering partner to build Facebook Marketplace. And he's now the CTO of OpenAI. So you can really go far. But all right, so let's see how the duo of ambition and execution works in a few real-life examples that I've personally experienced. All right, well, we're just talking about Facebook Marketplace. So when I led its creation, our maximum ambition was to build the world's largest local marketplace, which was pretty ambitious because at the time when I first found out that there were people buying and selling in groups, the first reaction from folks was that we should shut it down and turn it to pages because buying and selling is a dirty behavior that doesn't gel with Facebook's concept of social and friends. Relentless execution here meant building and shipping Marketplace to over 350 million people in less than 12 months with 10 engineers, and then tripling that to over 1 billion people over the course of 2 years. When we had really important problems to solve, like trust and safety, like for example, one day we got a call from Zuck's EA to tell us that Zuck's mentee was scammed on Marketplace. We were like, Zuck has a mentee? What? Or driving more transactions and growing faster. We'll laser focus the entire team, and we don't leave the lockdown room until we hit the metric. I know lockdown can be a trigger word now, but we have these things like lockdowns where we really focus the team and everyone moves to a physical space and actually get it done. With Stripe apps, our maximum ambition was to build Stripe to be the financial nervous system for SMEs around the world. Relentless execution here meant that a handful of us came together and built brand new developer APIs, embedded UI elements in the Stripe dashboard, and we convinced 50 partners to take a punt with us with Stripe apps. We eventually scaled that to nearly 400 apps. From start to launch, we did this in 8 months. Making Stripe a core part of how founders run their business, from payments to operations to support. And finally, with Common Room, our maximum ambition there was to fundamentally reinvent how sales teams build pipeline with AI agents so they can target the right people, engage at the right time with the highest conversion. Relentless execution there means that we gave up on our existing 1 million ARR community management business and completely pivoted the entire company. We invented a whole new B2B SaaS category of customer intelligence. We convinced Gartner that that was a real thing. And resulting in the startup now powering over half of the cloud 100 companies like Anthropic, Segment, Notion, and Atlassian. And so each of these 3 examples, I think, began with an outcome bold enough to scare people. We used to talk about the difference between when is fear good and when is fear bad. And I think often setting goals, if you're not a little bit afraid of the goals you're setting, then probably not 50-50 goals. And so, and they're combined with relentless and disciplined execution to manifest it into reality. And so that's a flywheel in motion. This mindset, I think, creates global winners, and more importantly, when done consistently, it goes beyond your companies, your teams. I think that as a broader goal and also a broader mission, it's also really, really important to drive the economic future of this country, of New Zealand. And I'll just go on a side tangent on why that's so important, but I'll promise to tie this back. Because I think economic growth is really how we pay for the country that we want. And based on figures from Growth New Zealand, if we keep growing roughly at what we've done over the past 20 years, which is about 1% GDP, 1% GDP growth a year, we'll barely be keeping the lights on, and we'll be hemorrhaging talent to overseas. At 3% GDP growth per year, young people start to see a future, and we can really start to invest in the future of our country. At 5%, for 10 years, we actually become envy of the world. top 5 globally for healthcare and educational outcomes, low poverty rates, specialist teachers in every classroom, so on and so forth. And this future of 5% GDP growth is possible. Countries like Denmark shows what happens when a nation builds export winners, concentrates talent, converts private success into public goods, where you have winning companies that create resources, good policy, convert those resources into services, and so we can win globally and invest back in our country. And so building globally ambitious businesses that win is not just profitable, it is actually noble. It moves this country forward. And I think everyone here in this room, product leaders, hold the lever that we can design cultures of ownership that produce those global winners. And I think tech is really central to actually driving that. So ownership is how small teams build billion-user products. It's how startups become global winners. It's how New Zealand turns talent into prosperity. Define outcomes worthy of your energy. Execute relentlessly. Treat the company like it's yours, because its success really does depend on you. You are not just product managers. You are cultural architects. You set the pace for what your company can become and what New Zealand one day can become. I really do believe we have the talent and we have the proof. Now, we just need more ownership. So start today. Let's own the outcome. Thank you.